That's the day we live in. We're living in the Matthew 24 day.
We're definitely living in the Matthew 24 day. We're talking about, before the show, we were talking about people that have been led astray to donate.
To give and support the things that
Right.
that underhandedly are supporting things that are so immoral. But anyway.
Yeah, they're led astray. The Lord looks at the heart. Sometimes
He does.
Sometimes we get duped.
That even the elect will be deceived, is what we're told.
It's a scary thing.
Yeah.
So thanks for starting us off with the doctrine of election.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Sure. I believe in election.
Me
You
too.
just got to let me define it.
They keep telling me that we're going to have one this year in November, I think, next month. So we had, I don't know where to start. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. First of all, did you know that you left your mic on in the second service and you were an honorary member of the praise team? Because you were singing
did I?
along. Yeah, well, I mean, you weren't in the house, but I heard you in my ears for like 5 minutes, and I heard you singing, and you were greeting people. And it was great. I was like, this is great. I got Pastor. Of course, I was a little frustrated when you were like, oh, not this song again. I heard that when you said that.
I did not say
Just
that.
directly.
No, I did not say that.
Directly into
well,
my
they
ear.
didn't hear me over the house.
No. They didn't hear you there. I just wanted to tell you that
Well,
that was a beautiful
I
thing.
could not. I can't believe that. I try my best. Because on one occasion you hear these stories, but this story is true.
Like going to the bathroom or
Yes, I was in the bathroom and my mic was on.
whatever. Did that actually happen?
Yes, it did, and I was in there with the monster of education at the church that I was pastoring, and we were in there. We were fixing to go out because we were a part of a musical play.
Oh, wow.
And I was Paul and he was somebody else, and I'll never forget that. It was, it was so embarrassing,
That's too good.
until somebody ran in and said, "Hey, man, your mic is on. Your mic is on."
They run into the bathroom to
Yeah, they did.
tell you that your mic is on. No, we didn't have any embarrassing moments like that yesterday. I just love hearing you sing. I was like, this is great. I get to sing along with
Well, I
Pastor.
didn't know that.
It was only
was
on.
I singing?
It was only on for a sec.
Well, I mean, if I was out in the vestibule, if I was out there at the
No,
welcome
this was
thing.
after the service started.
Oh,
I don't know.
After the
It
service
might have
started.
it might have gotten hit. I don't know because I saw you hug a couple of family members and maybe they tipped it or something like that. So anyway, don't everybody out there don't get any ideas. Don't try to switch Pastor's mic on for him. Well, what else to talk about? Man, we're gonna get to some Hebrew study in a little bit. But I wanted to talk to you about going to Florence because you did this great illustration about Michelangelo's David.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to geek out about this a little bit because I assume you've been to Florence and seen this.
I have.
Really cool story about the block of marble. You guys just need to listen to the message from yesterday. That block of marble that sat in the town square of Florence for years and years. And I just remember. Basically, my brother and I were backpacking through Europe. This was years and years ago. Yeah, we did the thing.
Did you
we
really?
Did.
How neat.
We really did it. And we were like trying to pick all the places to go. And I was like, I really want to go to Florence because obviously the architecture is incredible. I want to see the Duomo. And then I knew that the David was still there. And I'll never forget it because I walked in to the room where it is, but I didn't know it was that room. And I was just looking at these other statues that were right here, and these were large statues. These were still like 5 or 6 feet, and I was just like staring at them, like, this is amazing. This is incredible work. And my brother had to tap me on the shoulder, and I looked down the hall, and of course it's set up perfectly. It's at the end of this hallway in this circular room, and it's just breathtaking.
It is. It's unreal. It really.
I mean, is it 8 or 9 feet tall? How tall is it? Somebody looked at it. Get those numbers on my desk. How tall is that statue?
I think it's taller than that, isn't it? It seems like it's forever, going up and looking up at him. And you'll notice, this is the wild thing to me, how these sculptors know to do this. His right hand is proportionately larger.
Right.
Because of the way he's standing, and the way you look at it. Yes. And but it looks like it fits in.
It's balanced, yeah.
Yes. And those guys just amaze me at how they're able to do that.
It's absolutely incredible.
Where's my David?
Yeah.
Yeah.
17 feet.
17 feet.
It's 17 feet tall.
Yeah. See, it seems that way to me. To you, it's not quite
I know,
as tall.
yeah, for me, it'll never be as impressive because I'm too tall to begin with. I guess if he did a statue of me, well, number one, I'd want a loincloth. But if he did a statue of me, it'd have to be something like, 38 feet tall. It would really be up there.
Well, I made the comment in one of the services, how they had turned that thing to look toward the city of Rome, as if to say, we have our eyes on you, don't attack. Because the Pope had an army at the time.
That's right.
And these cities were like countries to themselves. And the Pope would come and would attack cities, which were states. Venice was a state. In fact, Venice had been incredibly powerful at one time. Rome itself was a state. Florence, Milan, all of these places.
We need, one more thing about the David, because you mentioned the way that he's looking, and so I looked up a picture of it again while you were talking about it, and the thing that's Michelangelo's understanding of the skeleton and the anatomy.
Yeah.
He even kind of has this lean as he's looking down, and I'm like, to be able to plan all that and to do that.
That's what I was saying about the hand. When you look at it, it's all proportional. But when you get up close, you start to study it. You see, this hand is larger than it's out of proportion. But when you're off, the same thing with the other sculptor, the Moses. I walked into a church one time in Rome. Mm-hmm. It's called St. Peter's of the Chain.
Right.
And I walked in there, and I got down, and I looked over, and there's his Moses, the one with the horns that comes out. And I had no idea it was in that church. And it's stunning. It is a stunning piece of sculpture. But they're pieces of that because you look at it and he's done, how they'll do veins.
I just
and how they'll do a muscle that, but they would get corpses and they would kind of dissect and look at
that
these
makes
things
sense, yeah.
And study the human anatomy.
Yeah, well, you have to have more of a complete understanding.
Yeah.
And they I guess a modern equivalent might be like the 3D models that they make for video games and movies and that sort of thing. Because I remember watching a making of even a movie like Toy Story or something, and they have to be able to make a model that looks realistic. Mm-hmm. They have to know. They have to decide. Okay, what does a skeleton look like? What does the skin look like?
Yeah.
Because all of these things come together to create
amazing.
that illusion.
It
of
is
reality.
fascinating. Yeah.
You mentioned the Dark Ages yesterday. This obviously the Michelangelo's sculpture and all the rest. This is part of the Renaissance, which this is 15th century, right? You said it was the end of 1400s.
Yeah. 1463.
So then before that, you have the Dark Age. You need to do a Wednesday night series on the Dark Ages, because that's maybe you just do one message on it, because it's just fascinating to me that after that one battle you lose, and I guess some of this is trying to simplify it some, but you lose all of the people that are the scientists, mathematicians, astronomers, so on and so forth. There's nobody to disciple the people in just really anything academic.
Yeah.
And so and the domino effect of that for almost 1,000 years, you just don't have the people being educated and creating any kind of artwork or moving anything forward technologically. Yeah. That is just so strange.
No music is basically written during that time.
Right.
No paintings, no sculpture, no books are being written because nobody knows how to do any of it. You would say all of academia ran out of Rome and they went to Constantinople, which is Istanbul today. The empire became so large that and I can't remember the emperor that did this, he divided it in two. And he put his capital, maybe it was Constantine, but I don't think it was Constantine
the first.
They divided the empire, and they made Constantinople in the east, and they make Rome in the west.
Right.
And so the two emperors kind of ruled together. They join together, and they fight wars together, things like that. But when Rome falls, they all flee over here to Constantinople because it was strong and it had an army and they were secure. Well, it's going to fall in 1453. And so all of them then grab everything and they run back over here to Rome, back over to Italy.
It's interesting to me how there are still vestiges of that division in our culture even today.
Where there are certainly over there, that's where you get the Eastern Orthodox instead of the Catholic Church, the Greek Orthodox, the Eastern Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox.
Well, that's exactly what I'm thinking of. And
Yeah.
obviously, I said our culture, but I guess I just mean the current global climate.
Yes.
You still have the church being divided in that way.
Yes.
And I guess, I don't know, I mean, I don't really know much about the war in Ukraine, but I guess there's probably some of that too, just these long-held different cultural divides that are still reflect. Because I sent you that that video of watching like the borders of the nations.
Was that not
change.
fascinating?
That was really interesting.
If they would slow it down just a
I
tad,
know,
so you
so
could kind of look at everything, but that really is educational, especially for young people today.
I need to tweet
to look
that out.
at that and see how the borders have changed over the course of time. How many maps have just been rendered useless?
Yes. Well, I even think, I mean, the first maps that I was looking at when I was, I guess I was in grade school, let's say.
Had the USSR.
Exactly. That was
Yeah.
the biggest country on
Yeah,
there. And it just
yeah.
doesn't exist anymore. That was
No.
30 years ago.
Yeah,
It's gone.
you got all of these countries that broke out of that. Although Putin would love for all of that to be put back together, and that's
Well.
his purpose in Ukraine.
Well, and but that goes back to kind of like, the Russian birthright, what
Yeah.
they feel like they're entitled to, which is
Could you
very,
believe
very
how
interesting.
big Poland was?
Yeah, it gets so large and then it disappears for a time and then it comes back.
Poland basically had engulfed what we know as Ukraine today.
It's fascinating stuff.
So why don't they have a right to it?
I don't know. I mean, I remember learning about that in government class, like the idea of divine right.
Yeah.
People thinking like, well, we have a right to go. I mean, we did in the United States. You can look at just the fact that like this nation was colonized in the first place.
Yeah.
These big swaths of land, Louisiana Purchase, and all this, and then eventually annexing Hawaii and Alaska. It's just happened
Yeah.
through the ages.
Yeah. Russia still wants Alaska back.
Do they?
Yeah.
Do they? Well, I don't know much about that. Although I do remember that story you told about that. What was that one lady that was trying to hike from New York all the way to Alaska?
Yeah.
And she was last.
She went back to Russia, as far as we know. But nobody could ever find what happened to her.
That was a crazy illustration. I remember. I don't even know if we talked about that here on the show after you did that. But you've got people after you for these illustrations. They're trying to.
I just did
trying
a
to steal them or whatever.
two-part series on Preaching Coach, and it's online, and I've gotten a ton of response out of that. And he interviewed me. He said, listen, you're known for illustrations, especially historic illustrations.
Right.
I'd like to do a two-part thing. And so we did that, and it was interesting to me.
Well, and then yesterday you threw the curveball. You went with the true Alabama illustration.
Yeah.
You just started off with college football.
Yeah, yeah.
Started and finished with. How do you pronounce the guy's name?
Yangalele.
Yangalele. There was somebody on Twitter cracking me up, where the guy was just like, "I
Yeah,
love a
it's
pastor."
the weather guy, Jason.
Oh, that's right, Jason Simpson. And he was saying that it's important in a pastor Matt. You got to pay attention to Pastor Mac's sermon because not only will you learn how to pronounce the Greek and Hebrew, but also Yangalele. You're going to learn how to pronounce that finally after looking at it. There's so many of these athlete names you never know how to pronounce. Even the announcers, they go back and forth. How do we pronounce this? How do you pronounce that? But Yangalele, he's going to be back under center this coming Saturday.
Supposedly, according to Dabo.
Was he really saved at
Yes,
this church?
he
I don't
was.
know
He
that
told me
story.
that.
Really?
Yes, he told Debbie and myself. We talked to him for a little while. When he came down here, when they retired his jersey, Deb and I were standing off just by ourselves, and up walks Dabo Swinney by himself. And of course, Debbie is decked out head to toe in orange,
yeah.
and so she turns around and tells him. We introduce ourselves. He said, "Oh yeah, I know. I know your church." He said, "I was saved there at an FCA fellowship
Get outta here.
down at the old church." Yeah.
When are we buying the old church back, by the way?
As soon as you give us the minute. You want to take up an offering right here?
It just sits there empty. I drive by it all the time. The kids are like, "What is that?" I'm like, "Man, that's where Valleydale used to be." That's a good illustration that the church is more than a building, right? Church is where the people are at.
It is. It is.
Well,
Churches, though, they do have sentimental purpose. They do have sentimentality to
Oh
them.
yeah, I love church, but well, if anything, it's kind of interesting. You and I have talked about this before. It's our building has more of a like kind of the community center vibe.
Yeah,
It doesn't really have like the in many ways, it just does not look like a traditional church building at all.
No.
And so I guess you could do the sociological study of like, what is lost in that? Like if you don't let your church building look like a church building, and then what is gained?
Yeah.
And that I don't know. I don't have an answer to that.
I've
I think
had,
it's interesting.
folks, and it's funny for me to talk about older folks because I am older, who used to go out to brush arbor. I've preached in churches where they had a brush arbor right out by
What is
it.
that?
It's where horticulture, where vines and
Okay,
things
yeah.
kind of come up under, and they'd put the pulpit up under there.
Oh, wow.
You'd preach out open air kind of deal.
Oh, okay.
I've done tent revivals where they had sawdust on the ground, and they've all remembered that. But
Yeah.
then they'll come in here, well, this doesn't look like a church. Well, neither does a brush arbor. Neither does a tent.
That's a really good point.
What difference does it make what it looks like?
It's
what's going on in there.
People get so up in arms. I love the deacon that'll stand up there and be like, "There will never be synthesizers and electric guitars in this church," and he's standing in front of a huge organ that is a synthesizer.
Yeah.
And you're like, "Sir, can we?"
At First Baptist Waco, they threw the first organ out in the Brazos River. They took it out and threw it into the Brazos River.
Why?
Huh?
They were
It was
just
an Allen organ. They tell that story. Allen organ will tell that story when they go and
Oh, because it was like a heretical demonic.
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. It was the first Allen organ. It was the first organ they ever had in First Baptist Waco, and they took it out and threw it in the Brazos River. Those
It's just
Texans.
incredible to me.
Those Texans.
We will never have a haze machine in this church, but we're going to burn 600 candles every single Sunday. What are we doing here?
I don't want a haze machine, smoke machine, fog machine, candles. It all just messes your throat up.
We need to get we need to get some pyrotechnics and have Pastor like jog out to the pulpit.
Yeah.
With like Pike is buying it right now.
Oh gosh.
We're gonna have all kinds of haze and whatnot. I wonder what would Miss Debbie think of that? She'd probably love it.
I don't know. I don't know. I just do know that I've preached in places like that,
Yes.
and it just the smoke and all that just messes up
It
your
really,
throat.
yeah. It can do that. Looks cool. Doesn't make you.
I
doesn't make you sound
preached
all like-
one night down at Idlewild in
boy.
Tampa, and Denver and the Mile High Orchestra played before I got it. You know where I'm going. I've told you this before.
I think so. I can't
Denver
remember.
comes out in an all red
Oh,
suit.
that's right. With the
with
haze
all
and
of this
everything.
smoke and everything.
And you're
You know
like,
what I'm
this is
preaching on that
satanic.
night? Preaching on worship, but I'm preaching out of the Old Testament. I go back to Lucifer. So I just got up and I said, I'd like to thank Denver for setting
What
the stage-
an incredible
setting the
illustration.
stage for me. I love
you for
Denver and the
that.
Mile High. I just think they're good.
They
They're
really,
great.
it really is some great
Yeah,
music.
yeah.
Well, you reckon we ought to talk about the sermon
It
here,
would
Pastor?
it would probably behoove us to do that.
Talk about the sermon. Of course, we don't have to go to a meeting after this, so we can make
Thank
this.
the Lord.
We can do 2 hours here if you want to. We can.
Moses is a fascinating guy.
He really is. Well, I love it. He's
A little
become.
complex, but fascinating.
Well, you showed us some of the complexities. I mean, you talked about how. I don't even know exactly where to start. The thing that well, what were you going to say? The thing that comes to my mind first is this idea of rebirth.
Mm-hmm.
You say in the Septuagint when he stood up that's
Yeah.
the verb anastasis, which
Uh-huh.
means, as many of us know, that means to resurrect. But in this context, it means he stood up again.
Yeah, yeah. Which leads me to believe he just collapsed down there by that thing, by
Yeah.
that well. He just got in there was a well. He just collapses there, probably just gets some water and just brings it to his mouth. I've been in the Sinai before. It is a wilderness, and it is a desert wilderness.
Yes. But the point you were making there is, like, there are just so many ways that Moses points to Christ.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of like the Holy Spirit has inspired this. Well, I know he has,
right.
But to reflect a little bit of the coming Messiah.
Well, because immediately after that, and we're in Exodus chapter 2, verses 15 through 22. Because immediately after that, he then serves these young women by fetching water he beats up these other guys, and then he fetches water for them, and these are all like protecting, serving, really even going beneath himself, because men didn't get water. They didn't draw water.
They didn't do that. And I made the comment, and I'm just making an observation. I am not stating what should be going on today. I'm just making the observation. In that culture, men did not do that. That was a woman, and they had very distinct roles that they followed.
Sure.
Now, I'm not saying, oh, it was terrible, it was horrible. I'm not even going there.
They just didn't second guess the fact
They
that
just
men and
didn't
women
do it.
were
This
different.
is what women did. This is what men did.
Sure.
It was their way of life. I don't know that they even questioned it. But he does what men would not do.
Well, and it just shows, like, it wasn't a sin for a man to draw water. But this was something where he went completely outside himself to serve somebody else.
You remember when Eliezer shows up at the well, and is it Rebecca? Is it Rebecca?
Oh,
I get Rachel and Rebecca
That's
confused.
Abraham's servant, Eliezer, yeah.
And I think it's Rebecca that is there, and she draws water.
Yeah.
He says, Lord, let me, if I see a woman here and she draws water for my camels, I'll know that this is the woman. Well, she's down there drawing, and Eliezer just lets her do it.
Right.
Well, why? Well, that was what a woman did.
I looked this up yesterday, actually, while you were talking, because there's this cross-reference with the drawing water to that very passage, and now I'm not finding it. I thought it was Genesis 20. Yeah, it's Genesis 24.
Yeah.
And so you guys can look that up as well, because it's right after Sarah's death and when Isaac then goes.
And then it still carries over. You're at least 1,000 and some odd years away from Jesus when Jesus tells the disciples, hey, you'll notice a man carrying a jug of water.
Right.
Well, that's going to stand out like a sore thumb. That's like somebody waving a red flag out there.
Yeah.
You're going to see that because you don't see that.
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah.
That's not what you normally see.
So Moses, and I guess I'm so glad you brought it up, because obviously these days, men and women have different roles, but in general, everybody gets water.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. So you draw attention to that because of the context of it. We see that Moses is, I would say, being very Christ-like in that sense, similar to how Jesus goes and washes the feet. Well, the master never washes the feet, right? Well, in that context, he does. So, well, the man never draws water. Well, in this context, he's going to, because he's in a sense showing how he has grown, and he's leaving behind his royalty.
Yeah.
He's laying that aside.
Yeah.
Just like Christ did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. It's interesting to me that he comes up, in one chapter, he comes up on two different situations of injustice. The one with the Egyptian beating the Hebrew, the one where the men are abusing these 7 ladies. And he's confronted with both, and he responds to them differently.
Yes.
There's no death here. We're not even told that there was a fight, other than he rose up and he delivered them.
I thought that was interesting, that because you called that out yesterday as well, where you said there's no death. So it's possible. It's a little bit of an inference, but it's possible that Moses is already growing in how he responds to conflict.
Well, I think the Holy Spirit, in all honesty, is showing us how God's already working in his heart, how God's already working in his life, because he's going to be humbled. He's not going to take it to the degree that he would have, that he's already taken it to just a few verses earlier. But there's something that is slowly beginning to change in this guy.
And yet we understand that he still has a long way to go, because
40 years worth.
Well, but you pointed to how they said, like, hey, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of this. And they're talking about Moses, and they say an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds and even drew water for us. So he still's walking like an Egyptian.
Walking like an Egyptian.
He still looks like one, probably still dressed like one. Mm-hmm. So he has a lot to do to, I guess, reclaim his Hebrew identity, And like you said, God's putting him on the sideline and getting him ready for his next big task. The true task.
Yep.
Being the deliverer.
And that's what we're going to get to this coming Sunday, because we'll pick up in verse 23, which is where the new pericope begins, and we'll go into chapter 3, where God appears to him in the burning bush. The angel of the Lord appears to him in the burning bush.
So, and then you're going to have to make that a short sermon. Hannah's really after us to make this a short service this Sunday. She even called me out on stage. You went out to the vestibule. I'm up there.
I can't be short enough. So I'll work at it.
I know.
I will work at it.
I've been waiting for this burning bush message.
Look at this thing here. This is an interesting thing to me, and I've not pointed. Verse 18, chapter 2, when they came to Ruel, the father. Now, he's called, back up in verse 16, the priest of Midian. You come to chapter 3, and verse 1, Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law,
That is
the
interesting.
priest of Midian. His name was Jethro, but they called him Ruel, which means friend of God.
So does he have two names, or is there just saying he is a friend of God? What's happening right there?
Well, he evidently does, you know. Mac is not my real name.
Sure.
I'm just called Mac.
Donald.
My granddaddy started calling me Little Mac. And then I reached a point to where everybody just started calling me the big boy, Big Mac, you know. Anyway, Jethro's his name, but Ruel probably is the name that people who knew him would call him friend of God, which to me has to conjure up for Moses all the thoughts of Abraham. Because Abraham was called the friend of God. God called him friend.
I'd love to we could have a long conversation about this, just about the different, our conversation is clearly too long. Yeah, we've put Joanna to sleep over there. Our conversation is clearly too long. But the concept of names, and we got to do that song again on Sunday, the new name written down in glory. But the concept of you're given a name, you are called by so many different, you got nicknames, that sort of thing. And then as you get older, like for you got grandkids now, they all call you Doc, right?
Yeah.
So the different relationships, how you have different names in different contexts, and then the ultimate context when we're there with the Father in eternity, we're given a new name. You got something else in here for us?
No, I'm reading the 3rd chapter.
You're
this is
already
such a powerful
You're already preparing your message.
Passage, yeah.
Well, this has been a great series. I'm so grateful that we're going to be still in this series in the next election year.
Yeah, probably so.
2024. 2024. So the next
2024.
Is that an Olympic year too? When do we get that? The Olympic schedule got so weirded out because of COVID. What
we got?
Nobody know. You guys aren't big Olympics fans? The World Cup is this year.
Yeah.
What sport is that? Soccer.
The World Cup.
Haven't heard of it.
Next Olympics are
The actual
international football.
Yeah.
We didn't even open with football talk today.
2026 and
I think did the Cowboys lose again?
Italy.
I don't know. You know, yesterday
Look.
Debbie is off up in the mountains, and I'm batching it tomorrow. I fly out to New Mexico.
Where it's snowing? No, you said it's
Well,
snowing
it
in
was,
Colorado.
but now they've taken it completely out of the forecast. In Durango, I'm flying in and out of Durango.
Okay.
So I preach at their state
You need
convention.
to take Jared with you. He's desperate to go back to Colorado.
I don't want to be around them. That place.
You don't want to be in Colorado anymore?
No.
Or you just don't like the Baptists at the
We
state
can go to
convention?
Philadelphia. You ever been to Philadelphia?
No, I've
The
not
Eagles
been.
are killing it. I'm a big Eagles
Yeah.
fan.
Oh, he's going
Well,
NFL with it. Jared,
Didn't the Phillies also?
They're in the World Series.
They're going to be in the World Series.
Oh yeah, go Phillies. Big
so-
Philadelphia guy.
You are?
no, he's trolling you. All right, I'm going to tell this story because Jared and I were both so frustrated at how bad the Broncos are his team, and the Ravens. That's who I root for, and both of them kind of started the season. And we were both like whining about how bad our teams were. And he was like, let's just pick a new team. Let's both go for Philly. Philly has won like 5 games in a row. So he's like committed to the bit that he's a Philly fan.
And, well, look at the baseball. They're going to be in the World Series. So I don't know what's going on up in Philadelphia.
Phillies church.
See you Sunday.
See you guys. See you
One
guys.
service.
Catch you on the flip.
One service.
One service, 10 a.m. Watch the World Series on Fox.
We're off.